interested or entertain the idea of moving to Northern Virginia?
Just ask them to send. I think everybody should send us.
Right, can you see us? Can you see the desktop now, Harper?
A note on whether or not you would be willing to relocate to. I think there's a couple of schools. There's Northern Virginia. There's Florida. There's just in an email. Put that information in along with the resume.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the contacts. It's
Okay.
Northern Virginia, Richmond, obviously, and you streaming?
Yep, we're all good, thanks.
Okay. And there's one possibility in Gainesville, Florida. So if you're interested in any of those, assuming that you're not going to be one of those picked up directly in Richmond/Winston-Salem, private Slack channel, Balance, Harper, myself.
And we're going to be email.
Doesn't matter. So Friday didn't go well.
No, it didn't.
As you can tell by now, we don't hide the truth from ourselves. That's a good thing about developers. What are we going to do, or what is Paul going to do? Paul is going to completely erase Friday afternoon from your memory, and he's going to replace it with a fantastic day.
Yeah, did you bring the sledgehammer in? No, it's required for my surgical operation. Okay.
So he and I talked over the weekend, and he proposed something that is going to be fantastic. And he is prepared, over-prepared for today, kind of like his ASP.NET MVC stuff, for Angular. And he's going to walk you through stuff, and your job today, this morning, is to keep up. Because this afternoon, you're going to be writing Angular. So without any further ado, please proceed.
Hello guys. So last night I sent over a couple of GitHub repos in the public chat. So could you create fresh copies of both of those things? We're going to need to do a little bit of individual configuration. So keep your old database stuff around that worked. Your Hibernate example, we're probably going to need to lift the connection string from there. What I've done is I've gone in and coded up the whole of the Sequila database and then Hibernate. So moving forward, you can have a complete working example of how to map things in Hibernate on the public GitHub. I've also created a small API, which is an application programming interface, which we're going to code against, where some of the things have already been done. So I'll just give you a quick overview. Once you've got your MVC project down, I'm going to wait because it's going to take a little while for you to do that anyway, but I'll show you whilst everyone's getting it. I've created an API and I've used something called Swashbuckle to put Swagger onto here. Now Swagger's really cool. It will sort of visualize your API. Oh, sorry, yeah, I've got to get myself plugged in here. This great big black screen that you can see is really cool. Sorry, Richmond, you're seeing the bottom of my keyboard temporarily. Right, there you go. Slightly better. So this helps us to visualize an API, and what we're going to be doing today is not an uncommon thing in the industry. As a developer, I often have to go against APIs which I've not written myself. You will be able to, with the two things that have been uploaded there, you'll be able to riff on both of these things. You could either expand on the API using the examples that are in the .NET project. We're not touching any of that today, but it's the options there for you moving on. Or you can look at, you can expand on the Angular thing as well. Now, when you get the Angular thing down, Aaron pointed out something interesting yesterday about that. And that was that it comes without the node modules, and that really is on purpose. Yeah, the whole NPM system is designed so that you don't have to store all of that stuff in your repositories, and you can just type npm install as soon. You can type npm install to get all of the stuff that your project relies on back. So. Just let me know once you've got these down. Anyone have any problems, just raise your hands and we'll get it sorted for you. But it's normally a case of just typing npm install. Yes, I can. I can do that. Well, I'm probably not going to do that, but I probably will make the text bigger. Is that big enough? Or do we need to go one higher? Let's have a look and see what it looks like on the screen. Yeah, can we work with that, or do we need to... I can go a little bit... I can go bigger here, you see. But this isn't really that important. And I can go up bigger on the app as well. Yeah? Okay. So, as you can see, I've created an API to cover a couple of areas. And what I think I'll do, just so we got everyone on the same page, I'm going to pull down a fresh copy of the Angular project, and I'll take you through the npm installed thing so that everyone's sort of up and running there. The other thing I'd like you to do is to go to your nhibernate projects that we did, the basic example one that we all got working, and I'd like you to pull your connection string from that. You're going to need that because the one that you've pulled down from here, I think, is tied to my machine, and will not have the same server reference. But you should all be good with the stuff that you've got there as well. So I'm just going to open up Ubuntu. Ooh. I don't expect you to do this. Git bash is perfectly fine for your purposes.
You can walk them through pulling everything down?
Yes, I think that's best, yeah. And then we'll all sort of get on the same page. No one's going to get stuck.
Could somebody explain how npm talks to the package.json to get the node modules? I know there were a few questions about that on Friday.
Well, it's a dependency system, yeah. So packages.json contains your top level stuff. It literally reads that JSON file and says, is this thing in node modules? If it's not, I'm going off to get it. And if that package there has any dependencies that are not in node modules, it'll go and get that too. That's why it seems, you get 67 megs worth of it, and that's why we don't end up committing that stuff to Git afterwards, because the whole thing is designed so that you can basically pull the common public parts of your project back in from the internet. So yeah, that's by design, and it can throw you. It's odd, but when you create a new application with Angular CLI, it will automatically create a git ignore stuff, which excludes all of the node module stuff from going up. So that's basically what's going on underneath. So I think I've got a, yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to cd into my cloned directory.
I need to answer. I just had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure other people. Thank you.
No worries, Melissa. Right, so I'm going to... Angular it's called. So I'm just going to git clone the Angular project.
Can you paste that into Slack so everybody has that?
Yeah, it's already in there from last night. So I can do it again.
Not just point it out.
Yeah, it's in the Empower Public channel. For anyone who doesn't like scrolling, I could post it again. Yep. So I'll leave that up there. Oh. Ah. So as you can see, it's got this package.json thing, right? So if I type npm install, you can see that it's going to start looking through my package.json file, and it's going to start pulling down the bits that I haven't got to run my application. Hello.
Since you put that in Git, how did you prevent all of your node modules from going and being put in your Git repository?
Well, Ali's just asked me, since I put that in Git, how did I stop that from going? The key file for all of this is the .gitignore file, yeah? And the really cool thing about Angular CLI is that when you create a new project, it creates you a Git repository straight away, and it also includes a default gitignore file, which will exclude node modules for you.
Can you show us the file and see why it excludes that?
Yes, I can. Let's have a look. Is it in the root, or is it in the .git file? Alright, let me open up.
Sorry, it's not important. I guess it's
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for NPM to download. It's a massive 67 megs worth of stuff that it is. Right, where are I? Projects. Oop. Now, I think files that begin with a dot are automatically hidden by default when you do stuff. So ls-la, that sort of says long form, and I want to see all files. I think ls-a will show us the ones of dots as well. So that works in Git Bash, and it works here. So if I cat the gitignore, actually I think I might more it.
Those are
These.
command line commands.
Yeah.
Cat essentially means show me the entire contents of the file right there. And more allows you to scroll. More and less allows you to scroll.
So yeah, look, if we look at that file there, we can see that it says, look, anything in node modules I want to ignore. Anything that goes out into the distribution stuff I want to ignore. The reason for that is that this file is where your stuff actually gets compiled to, and the reason for that is that you can just recreate that at any time by running the ng-serve process. So yep, all of that good stuff automatically taken out. And if you're starting a new Visual Studio project and you've got a GitHub account or something like that, it will actually give you the option to create a repo with the right stuff already excluded for that given project type, like the object file. So if you create stuff on GitHub, you can get a gitignore file which will sort you out for that, or you can just download them. I mean, there are plenty of gitignore files out there that have been made by the community, and you'll be able to put those onto your system and prevent unnecessary check-ins for stuff that changes all the time because it's a binary or something. Right, so I'm going to just change into my projects directory on here. And into Git, and into cloned, and into Empower Angular. And if all has gone well, cross his fingers, when I type ng-serve open, my Angular app should run. That's not the one I prepared earlier. Possibly. Let me have a look.
going to figure out how many branches exist in a given repository, what's the command?
Just branch.
Get space branch, or you list all of them.
It's just master. I wonder if something's not gone up. I've got another copy on my machine, so let's just make sure that that actually does the things I expect it to do.
You see the little star after you said get branch? The star means that's where you are right now. So if you ever forget where you are, that's the command.
Yeah, I think I might not have. Yeah, that's terrible, terrible.
Does anybody explain to the rest of us what happened?
You didn't push his changes up to the repository?
Yep. That'll happen to you dozens of times this development. I could have sworn that you actually pushed your changes, but sometimes you forget.
You can, yeah, that's excellent. You're right. I was just asked whether that means what we've just cloned needs to be pulled again, and that is precisely what needs to happen. So I'm going to just push that up now. So if you could all do I'm going to jump back into my other project to make sure that that will work. My cloned project. Yeah, unfortunately, right, the mistakes never go away. Yeah, that is pretty much a decent approximation of the situation.
Do you need to do another npm install or different modules?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm gonna see whether that's the case now. I don't know if we will, because I don't think that I installed anything else to get my project working. Right, whilst we're getting that sorted, how's everyone doing on their the Empower MVC? Have you replaced the connection string?
One possible gotcha is if they tried to do anything with files after they did the clone, and now they try to do a get pull,
yeah,
failure because there's the other command changes.
Yeah, that is very.
Remind them about get stash.
Yeah, there's no. If you're told you can't pull because you've got changed files, you can do a git stash, and if you don't care about those files, or reset hard, you can go back to a previous commit. If you don't care about those files, you can just drop them. But I've just done a git pull. I don't think you guys are going to have any problem because of that great git ignore file, which it ignores all the compiled stuff.
Does anybody have problems with the git pull? Y'all good?
I'm not sure what we're doing.
Is that what you come up then?
No, have you done a git pull?
Yes.
Can you
When did they get pulled and I opened that folder?
let's have a look where? Yeah, just close that down for us for a sec, please.
Okay.
No, just stop it from running. Press Control. Okay, never mind. So I've definitely got the right project up there. If you do get pull, you should get it down. So before we go through, whilst everyone's getting their connection string set up, I just want to show you give you a little idea of what Swagger does. APIs, I think the first API you worked on was a simple JavaScript API, correct, when you were doing your earlier stuff? This is very nice because it tells you what things need. and you can test things out as well. So I'm going to get the actor associated with the ID 1. Ooh. Oh, that's a list. Oh, sorry, that's a list of actors there. Swagger. Ah. And what we've got here, a couple of different projects that operate between each other, is quite a common paradigm out in the real world. The last place I worked for, they had a number of very, very small websites called microsites. So if you want to see Swagger yourself, once you've got your connection string in, you can just run your Empower MVC thing, and you should, if you just put Swagger onto the end of the address, you'll see this screen.
I think because you're excited, you're going really, really fast.
Yeah, okay.
Did you go over what projects you've got pulled down and what? Because it's not just one thing that you're running right now, right?
No, that's right.
You want to probably explain the architecture and where we're going.
Okay.
And now you're doing things on top of one piece of the architecture, and you've done it in like 10 minutes.
Yeah. So we've got two separate projects running. We've got the API, and we've got the old Empower DVD shop, which has got the films there. That isn't this. The one on the left of your screen is an Angular application. The one on your right of the screen is a C# application. The right information from the right side of the screen serves the information on the left side of the screen. And this is not, like I said, it's not an uncommon thing to have lots of very small services that provide data, and it's not uncommon to have, especially these days. Yes?
Paul, if we're using Angular, why are you still using C#? Can't you just do everything in Angular?
Well, you could, but I've got a lot of stuff. Angular runs on the client. Ali's just asked me, why am I writing two things here? Angular is a client-side technology. .NET is a server-side technology. So we get a lot of benefit on the server side, being able to check things, being able to check types that we wouldn't necessarily get on the server client side. The other thing is, it's quite dangerous from a security perspective to expose too much information on the client, because people can just sort of start inspecting your source and perhaps pulling out some important values and things. So the stuff that's secret, the stuff that we don't want any client seeing, will be done on the server side. And again, that's quite common.
Sorry, how do we get the Swagger?
/Swagger. So it'd be whatever you've got there.
How do you install it?
How do you? I've installed it already. So and it's part of the project. But it's I installed Swagger by installing a package called Swashbuckle. A NuGet package called swashbuckle.asp.NET Core. You have to do a tiny little bit of configuration, say maybe 3 lines, but there are great guides to do that, and you'll get up and running immediately. One interesting.
Why did you need it?
Well, Ali's asking me why I needed this. Strictly speaking, I didn't. But I think it's an excellent tool for showing people, for visualizing an API. And even as a developer, when I've written an API, say I don't want to get into my Angular app, yeah, I can run that and be sure that everything works as I expect. So, you know, like he says, that'll be in your, we've already got a good working example of your connection string in your old nhibernate project. So if you look at the apps, yeah.
We are doing this right now, right? What you said to pull it up, yeah. That's what we pull up the Yeah, they can't hibernate.
Yeah, that was just so that you could get your connection string, which is in. I think it should be Apple file, right?
Right, we're just going to get everyone sorted so they're hooked up to Swagger, okay?
Let's do this, right?
Right, everyone, are you connected?
Are you sure it's 2014? Okay. So now let's just do one thing, right? Let's change this. Okay?
We did that last week, didn't we?
Just that entire thing with trust capital T underscore connection capital T connection equals capital Y yes and semicolon oh no sorry it's called double quotes semicolon closed angular. Yeah. I don't know if that add is required.
Okay, so it's queuing up on the semicolon.
Oh, that goes inside. Sorry.
Okay. And then copy and paste that into
wherever you no, wherever the other connection string is.
I have done a kind of paging. Paging supported on the sales side, but yeah,
one step at a time.
Yeah, exactly. An alternative, if you can't find your connection string, guys, if you can't find your connection string, an alternative is just open up SQL Manager Studio, see what the name of your server is, and replace the word localhost with that name.
Richmond has a question.
Yep.
Harper is verifying that of the two repositories, only the Empower Angular needs npm install. The C# app does not. Right?
That's correct. Adam, if you claim that repo, yeah, I'll be able to see
Yes, sir. Yep, the package just downloaded too.
Have you claimed both repos?
I mean, I'm sorry, because I still have so I didn't receive
It almost works.
right here. Okay.
I feel like this is not what it's supposed to be. Oh, right.
Yeah, open and public and when you open up for the first time, type /swagger on the location bar. So it should be something like localhost 4974795 /swagger. That's pretty, isn't it? How are you doing? All right? Are we happy or are we good? We need help.
I need help. I need to go help.
Okay, yeah.
40 other people.
Yeah. All right. So we're getting people up with Swagger, and if you have got Swagger, maybe you'd like to just give it a little test. Create a new test category. You can do that by going down to the category API, clicking the try it out button, and then typing in.
Can you hold on a couple more minutes?
Yep. And you can see. We're not really going to be touching the Visual Studio stuff today, apart from getting this bit up running so we can do our Angular stuff.
Okay, so how do I get the Angular file? Now I had to reinstall my Git bash because it's correct. I got everything in the file.
Did you
I did both of the Git clones. I did
sequential
pull. Yeah, I did a pull.
Git stash.
Oh, but it's just free.
I don't think you've got.
I didn't do a Git stash.
See, yeah, you didn't do the pull. But you've done the pull now, so that's fine. So, open up a new Git window for me, please. We're going to use one to run this thing, and we'll use one to do everything else, yeah? Okay. Right. Harp, how's Richard been doing in terms of getting connected up? Settings file in Empire Angular.
So do I open it now? The NG serve open? You know, I don't want to bother you. We get this out. Do an NG serve get open?
Yeah.
Like this one.
Yeah, and it's double hyphen open. Harper, in answer to your question about where the settings are for Angular projects, it depends. There's a CLI settings. That's where most of the settings are. Where your styles are defined, the entry point to the app. I mean, I wouldn't envisage us changing this that much. But to your point, we've got something called a web API host. And that is going to need to match whatever port number you've got on your Swagger. So right now, it looks as if my point now I need to go over to. Interesting. Oh, sorry, I've got the wrong thing open. Right, you may need to make a change in this one file in your Angular project, depending on whether your thing opens up. If your port for localhost on your Swagger is 4795, you're fine. You don't need to change anything. You should just work. Right. Okay. Have you brought down the Visual Studio project yet? Have you brought down the Visual Studio project yet? No?
Yes, no.
Okay, right. Let's get back.
I thought.
Move. can you get the Visual Studio down for him, the project? I'll get it set up, please. Right. So I'm going to put this to one side for a bit, because it's still got people catching up.
I'm going to have a checkpoint that's like, okay,
Yep.
you need to run the app and have it working, and this is how you can tell.
Yep.
And if it's not, maybe we should have like 15-20 minute break, let Harper and all the docents go run around and help.
Yep. Okay.
Because that'll be a good starting point for you to
Yep.
explain what's going on.
Right, so can we get everyone to a point where they're able to run both? You're going to need to leave the Visual Studio app running because the Angular one needs it. Can we get
shut everything down, then step by step?
Yep.
That's how you do it.
Okay, so step by step. Okay, I've got a Visual Studio project here which I've cloned from Empower Public.
Said I need to put the Visual Studio project, get it out there.
Oh, okay.
So I've downloaded that. So let's just close all of this. And in order for this thing to fly, you just got to make sure you've got your connection string set up. If you don't know your connection string and can't find it, you can simply open up SQL Server Management Studio and replace the word localhost in your configuration file with whatever the name of your server is. But I would expect most of that to be sorted out by now. So I'm going to run my project here, my Visual Studio project.
Connection string. I thought we did that.
Well, I copied it, but I haven't.
Oh, that's
So I got it now.
So have you got that, yeah?
You had that. I just didn't know you had it.
Okay.
So that looks like it's failing. How do you know that's working?
What, the
The C# app. I mean, Paul Allen Taylor and Power MVC trailer. That doesn't like it's doing anything. How can I tell if it's working, Paul?
there's a lot of dependency stuff that's already run that would have failed if I wasn't configured correctly. But I can go to...
No. Why do you leave it running then? Do we care about a page that says Paul Allen Taylor?
No. But Swagger is on the same site.
There you go.
I cheated a little bit when coming up with the API. I used all of the stuff we developed last week and added a bit more to it. Incidentally, guys, I think I might have said this before, but that contains a complete working mapping of the NHibernate stuff. So if you want to review NHibernate, you can look at Empower Public. It's also got some service-based stuff in it too. If you want to review that, you can look at that, along with the dependency injection.
So, Paul, the other day I was really confused about what service was, and I looked at it over the weekend, and I saw that there were similarities between what we were doing in Angular and how we set it up in C# using the ASP.NET Core. So service is what's used by the components, and it is what is actually being injected into them, right?
Yes.
And then the services are essentially what the dependency injections rely on, right? So they're going to be what you actually do the insertion with. And that, so the naming convention is confusing because I thought a service was like, I don't know what I thought, but do I have that right?
Scott's just made a few observations about services, and look, specifically injected services. Now you'll notice that we've used these in both MVC and Angular, which should tell you how useful they are, because they're a concept that spans multiple languages now. The idea of having something that you can just inject and have something sort that out for you. Yep, you're up and running, very good. That's across all computing. You'll find the same ideas in Java, you'll find the same ideas in most languages these days. I mean, it's really the idea of an interface which allows you to do that. And dependency injection has made that even easier, because it's just a case of, yep, need this service, don't really care what it does, how it does it, I just need to call its methods. So it's something that's applicable to a lot of different technologies. which is one of the reasons we've taught it to you, because you learn the principles of services here, you become a Java developer in 5 years, those ideas are still going to be applicable. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm getting at like architecture,
Yeah.
you know, and like the different pieces and how they work together. Not
Yeah.
so much the code itself, but just like how you build it so that you can get to the code.
And a good example in the real world might be houses, yeah? Houses all have similar things. They may be made of different materials. You know, you might have a slate roof, you might have a thatched roof, you might have a flat roof, which is concrete. But conceptually, they've all got roofs, you know, and they've all got doors. Even though the individual details about those things may differ from door to door, from roof to roof, etc. Bethany, you're looking.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you take us to how you open Swagger?
Right. Are you running your local Visual Studio app?
Yes.
Right. So if you just type after the 4795 Swagger and then press enter, you should get there.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So just type / Swagger after the host name, and it will automatically load up. The Swagger's really here just for a reference. We're not going to be working in this today, but if we need to say, how does this work? What does it take? This is our reference, and we don't really even need to dig into Visual Studio to do that. So I'm going to minimize that and get it out of my way. Okay.
But we have to leave it open.
No, you don't even have to leave it open. It's just running in the background, but you know,
Leave it up.
yeah, I'm going to leave it up because it's the whole point of it is that we've got a reference to stuff that we're going to need later. So yeah, it's probably going to be a good thing to leave that up and running.
Okay. And how did you get to the A in the middle?
Sorry?
You see the A like right before Swagger in your tabs. It has the A. A-A-O. Right there. Where it says A. Of your tabs, it says A. That right A.
Yeah.
How'd you get that?
Right. I'm going to teach everybody here, Bethany, because yeah. So in your cloned Angular directory, if you've not done it already, open up. I would recommend opening up an entirely new window, yeah, to run this, so that you don't have to keep on stopping it and starting it. The only reason I've stopped this is because I want to show you how to start it. So it's ngserve open.
The Empower Angular.
And that's in the Empower Angular directory. So, the left-hand side is a client app speaking to the right-hand side, which is a server app. You okay over there, Richmond? Have a look. Let's see what's connection string. It's alright. That's it. No, it's not.
I wonder if I get the new virus.
I just need to find a server.
It's
Yep. So you're going to need to put it in up.
Yeah, but the computer's stroking out. Stuck in there.
Okay, so it says incomplete. Okay. So I get the
No.
You
Right,
don't
so
pull this one up in Swagger, right?
this is the Swagger one. So, right. So if you now go back to your Angler app, yeah,
And I say
wherever it's being served.
just all the time. It's an hour I say
yeah.
Right, so
But then is it like it's looking, or you actually should have done?
there's some photos down there. I don't need them.
I don't like to do stuff.
Alright, so just open up a new browser, new browser tab, local host. Oh, hang on. You've got, you don't need. You've got to have the Visual Studio running. You don't need to. Sorry, it's my fault. I should explain it.
Okay. Now this weird thing.
Okay, excellent.
How do we get it look?
So most people at this point have now got their API running, and they've got their Angler app running. I said most people. I didn't say all people. I stand by my statement. Right.
Oh, good. It doesn't pick it up because I need to connect it to this other damn thing. I have to. Okay, so I pasted it over here and saved it already. Do I have to run? Or what? That's a question, I don't know. Oh, I went to the app settings JSON from our example last week and I get the connection string to come back up. Like I copied and put it in, but that, yes. You were in code? Yeah.
Is it $42.95? Is that $42.95?
What are you looking for?
The API.
No, you just run. If you
There
run,
we go. Just click on that. There we go.
Right, okay. And the other one's 4200.
No, this is the one that we just opened. Hey,
Yeah.
so
Alright.
I was able to.
You've not got your connection string.
Which is that one? I just got it.
Is it?
Yeah. I just got it from the other example we did.
Is your Visual Studio app running? You got to have your.
Oh no, I haven't run it.
You've got to run your Visual Studio.
Okay.
Yeah. I say again, everybody's got to have their Visual Studio app running because if you've got no API, you cannot feed your Angler app. Okay.
So you say that we have to run that.
So why am I not
Now it's
getting
going to
this
take
stuff
30
when
minutes.
I come up with the whole 42?
Are you running the Visual Studio app?
Yeah, that thing is going to take a while.
No, I know
need a developer
that's
computer.
running. Again, alright, maybe.
So
No,
yeah.
I've tried twice now.
Take one.
It won't.
No,
If you take that out, it won't. It won't.
Find your connection string. Okay. The connection string.
Yeah.
it did yesterday.
Let's try it then. I don't think it'll work. See? Could not pass the JSON file.
Then we have to replace it in the one that we cloned.
I don't think that will work the way that it is. So.
And that should do it. But obviously it's going to take forever. Yeah, there's no other one in there. No. There you go. App setting JSON. Right there. That one. This is what we need to replace. Wait. You got it.
That's already in there.
Looks like it.
Is that what you had in yours?
Yeah, that's the one I had to change because we had a different one. It said localhost before.
That's the one with, when I did Swagger, then it comes up on It's the other one. When I go to push the film stuff into it, I'm not putting this one.
So I'm thinking the tool I should be up and running in a second when my computer decides to work. Oh, where is your other one?
It's on the other page. So that's why he has two different ones. I'm good at my computer problems. I still have computer problems this morning.
Me too.
I just had to restart. Like, it's just being super slow for some reason.
Yeah, Visual Studio just crashed.
Yeah,
I have the same. It's been crashing
mine
like
crashed.
every 5
And then
minutes.
I opened it again, and it opened 2 times. And then, like, I try to right click on my just basic Explorer menu or folder. It took like 10 seconds to open blank. I have no idea what's going on. So I restarted and I tried to catch up here.
We're waiting here.
I understand what to do if I can just do it.
This is actually a fully functioning Angular front-end app back in so,
Show me something, come on. Okay. Okay.
Did you type in backslash swagger?
Yeah.
So we're going to take a step back and figure out how did that happen.
Why?
Something's wrong in your database or connection.
Okay. Yes, sure.
Very proud of you.
And you're sure your server is 2017? Is that what it was on your
It's the same as it's still not working.
Well, it doesn't mean that that's yours. Like, do you, can you bring up SQL Server?
How's it getting going? Yeah. This you gotta get. I'm almost there.
So if I do that,
Still.
that's it's only on this one.
Full brain, like these French guys do.
Yeah, no, it can't. I mean, let's have a look.
Instead of just trashing computers left and right.
Yeah.
It's the same issue all the time. Lou, can you sort this out, please? Because we've got to move on. Yeah.
Question.
Right.
The 2 people behind who did npm install,
Yeah.
but they get issues, so they do the npm fix thingy,
Yeah.
audit fix, but that doesn't seem to work. So what do
Where's that?
like it gets basically saying ng command not found.
Yeah, it looks like I've seen the same thing over there. Who's not got it?
Like 2 people back there, and then some more people. I don't know what's happening.
I mean, the only if they're using, are they using the same machines they were using on Friday?
Seems like it.
Then I don't understand how it would have disappeared over the weekend unless it was never installed in the first place. So let's have a look and see if we can.
The very last one that we did, that one still worked. Since I number all, yeah, I got it from that one too. When we started working in NBC, I was numbering every single one of the copies we had just in case.
I did the same thing. The last one I called it this.
We got like 9 copies of the same thing.
Right? my computer's full of BBC projects.
Okay, hold on, Anthony. I said I'm okay. I'm not answering.
And you have a secure database.
That's the last one we did. This one.
I'm sending JSON. The other one, not the development, but the other one. That one. Did you save the changes last time? Maybe you didn't save the changes though.
This is all I'm getting. What it must be.
Furniture
We left last week, so we didn't save the changes. At that most, I don't like it.
I was just looking at a secure database.
I was like,
Really
oh,
all
no,
the
I don't like it. Yeah, I don't like it.
Look at all the databases.
No. I mean, it's one of
Increase your tables. Okay, do a new query.
What rating is NC 17? I don't know the rating.
Select star. Star. And then space. After.
How many you get? Right. Yeah.
Have a
Probably the latest version. That's, I had to change
okay, go back
Mine's
to
taking
your
like forever and a year. Oh, there. Right, mine took forever.
Are you
Got the
happy
right.
you made a new file?
It's the right database. Well, let me just go through this.
Feel the thing coming up. If everything's working correctly, you should see this thing here with the films populated. You know, if it's not working correctly, please see one of the assistants. Okay. But I want to start just going through the app.
Let's make sure everybody's there so you're not going to miss it, because this is the whole day, right?
Yep, this is the whole day.
Who does not have their app working right now?
Where's your name?
If you don't have your app working, call somebody over, because you need to go to a working state to move on.
Yeah, let me just.
I think so. It's running.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's just not doing anything. It's taking anywhere. There you go.
No, this is the one I wanted to get that part. I know that's working. Okay. So when I go to the other one, now maybe that'll work.
No, I do not talk to everyone in here that's got problems, okay?
There we go. Perfect.
Just missing one.
Yeah.
It was easy to do.
So full detail.
So you went crazy?
You talk to the whole team. They was having problems.
She has a menu.
That has been running for into
Did you say like? It's like good shit.
Did you get yours yet?
Almost. Not quite.
Not quite.
We always like to say that in our sport, we always say, when people say, we almost win it. Almost won camp. Almost won camp. Good for you, but you didn't. Trying to figure out where is your connection strength, because that's all what you need. You already got it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, running power and vision.
Now, when we downloaded this, does it also have Empower NBC?
Yes, it does. Yeah, the one that we cloned, yes. It says, yep. Yes, that's the one you have to change. The one that you just had, the server 2017,
Period, /
Okay, yeah, I got you.
leave server there, just change where it says
The whole thing?
just logos.
Yeah. Backslash. S, little capital S. 2017. Yeah. That should be good.
Try to run now.
Probably you're not running the project again. It's running the document, current document. Try to change it again to MVC.
Alright?
The solution is
Okay, go to, in Windows Explorer, go to where your project is.
One of them had done worse than the
No, you think she might?
Right there.
Yeah. They were going all the way until the...
No. No. Not the good proper British.
What is it? Brag.
Paul.
I just saw a bunch of.
Yeah, you can
I know they never have.
It's been like 8 years.
They never have.
Yours?
Okay, make sure.
Got your name on it.
Yeah, they would.
Right.
Yeah, you should.
Might need to help her get up.
Oh, it's okay.
Someone's gonna. I think you're gonna have to get someone in from start to finish. We've been going for almost 2 hours now. Okay. Right. So anyone not got both apps working at the moment?
Goldfinger, huh?
Is it right?
Right. Do you know what? If you don't, right, just run one of the API methods. Run category lists.
Let's take the sweet time right now.
Swagger.
That would be, but I don't think that's the old version.
Well, he's
There
got
you
the
go.
thing. It was just okay. Now go and run the other one, the Power Angular, while that one's running.
This one.
Go to- It takes a second.
Yeah. Thank you. You made it, man. You need the other side.
All right.
Good.
Unless you're not. Are you running Visual Studio?
No, remember these. That was the first step.
I learned a lot just now. You know what we did? I know what it is.
Are you definitely running Visual Studio? Like actually running the apps?
Yeah. So,
Right, so there's your problem. This is an action stream.
although my connection is strong, I'm not having any lots on it.
So you have both programs running?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to press something?
No, it takes a second and then it loads.
Just sitting there.
And you're sure?
And actually, use the same exact functions.
I don't know.
It's weird, right?
Right.
I had trouble.
Oh, no, it's just my fault. It's the list of them. I don't just
SQL service.
mine's not pulling the list of them stuff.
I need, if you bring SQL server, I need to see what the server is.
It's possible that's not what We'll see. We'll see. I didn't call one the same as everyone else's, so because I just left it as the default. I was like, I want to know what Sightsource. The two slashes is so that it knows that there's an actual slash.
You're like, that's funny. Thanks for hanging out. That's so much fun.
That's not supposed to be straight. It's supposed to look like that.
Where's your
No, I stopped.
Control C.
Oh. Is there not like a full stop?
Yes.
You can always close up.
Good to go, brother?
No.
You're like,
You don't have your down before stuff. You don't have your down before slash.
Yeah.
In front of 27.
Yeah, I feel like I just like
Right here.
It's always so bad.
Okay, wait. I don't know why it's not working. It should be working.
Oh, there we go.
There it is.
Yar. Yar. There it is.
Sasha, I think it was supposed to be that.
What? Yeah. Look, all right, because I go out through all the movies.
Wait, what did you say?
Here.
It's good. I haven't been like hearing. It's good. It's good. I'm not hearing. I really love that. You didn't know what because yeah, what if I was like, I love that movie? I would have been like, yeah, me too. Sure.
He's got some straight process. Right. Lou, when you've got that open, yeah, just change the port in your video to and then you should be cool as well. Okay, we're back now, and we're going to take a look at the structure of the Angular application. So, a refresher from Friday. Inside our Angular application, all of our application is stored in this directory called app. The equivalent of our layout page is held in a file called index. Any styles that we've defined globally live there. But our main lingua franca for the front end are what we call components. So this has got two main components here. It's got a films component, which is responsible for showing a list of films. And it's got a film detail component, which is responsible for showing a single film. Now, if I look at the Angular app here and click on, this is the films component, many films. And this is the film details component, details about one film. Now these components don't get the data themselves. Where do they get their data from? What gives it to them? The API. But how does information from the API get into the component? Does the component call the API itself, or does it get something else to do it for it?
It's serialized?
Well, what's? Now I'll give you a clue. Scott asked a question about this sort of stuff earlier on. Services. Service, that's correct. The components are equivalent of a controller in MVC. They're there primarily to control what functionality we allow access to. The services are the actual things that do the work. So if we have a quick look at the films component, and we can see that at the top of the screen here, we're importing film service.
And so everything at the top of this are called decorators, right?
No, Scott's just asked if these are called decorators at the top of this. No, these are imports. They specifically go off and bring the listed file into the Angular application. Okay, decorators are a C# concept that allow you to express properties of like validation or other. So these are imports. They will bring whatever's in those files will be brought into this thing for it to use. So we need to bring film service in before we can use it. Now, this is in contrast to .NET, where once you've referenced projects up, they're just there for you. Where we wanted to use, once we created our dependency to, say, a service class, we didn't have to say bring that file in specifically. It was just part of the project. In Angular, you have to bring each file that you want to use in either specifically, or you can do it globally, like in another file. But the convention is not to bring things in globally. It's to bring them in as you need them. Okay.
So is this where dependency actually happens? Is this like, are we injecting anything here? Is this just referencing?
Scott's just asked if we're injecting anything here, and we are injecting something. We're injecting a film service here. And most things that you'll see in an Angular constructor, especially a component,
where is that file?
film stock. If you look at the left hand side, app, films.
Okay. There.
So most things you see in an Angular components constructor are injected. And if you want to check whether something's being injected, you can look at the class itself. These will all be marked with something called injectable. I'll just put a little bit of shorthand on here to note this private thing. You wouldn't see this in C#, but what that means is that when this is injected, film service will become a private member variable of this component, able to be called in other parts of the component. And that really just stops us from having to do the same thing that we did in C#, where every time we were injecting something, we were creating a private read-only to store it so that we could use it elsewhere. Angular just handles that for us. If you put that private word in it, it says, right, I know I need to store this inside the class. People want access to this. I'll be pushing my stuff back up to Git, so with these comments, but I'm trying to go step by step. Okay, let's have a little refresher on the component. Angular classes aren't components by default. You have to declare, and this is all scaffolded for you. So if you do an ng new component, you'll get this automatically. Yeah, but there's 3 bits here. There's the main declaration that this class is a component. The selector refers to the custom HTML tag that Angular will use to use it to identify the component. The template URL is where the view equivalent, which is the and that's the equivalent of our CSHTML, not quite the equivalent, but close enough. It's where the markup is going to be stored. So if we want to make changes to the way things look, that's the file that we're going to need to change. And of course, you can change the file where the component gets its stuff from, but by default it will create stuff which is named similarly to everything else that you've got. And then you can also specify custom styles per component. And you can use a list of these. So what's going on here? How are these things, how is this component getting its results? Well, the other thing to say is that it implements on init. So this implements on init. This specifically promises to implement a method called ng on init. This method is run whenever the component starts. Right, I'm not. Does anyone want to hazard a guess at what that next bit is? Where my cursor's flashing over. What was that? Just a little bit louder, please. No, I'm talking about this thing here. What's that? Yeah, that's where our results are going to come in. Yeah, it's a placeholder so that our film results. And if we look at this, I've created a special class to hold our film results, and we'll talk you through all of that in a bit. But if I can zoom there right now, and as you can see, it's pretty simple. We've got a bunch of items which are of type film, starts with an empty list, and we've got total items, which is a number. And we can even look at film as well. And film looks just like your it looks just like the stuff that we've got in C#. You're familiar with all of this. So I created these classes because I knew that this is what I'd be bringing in. Anyone notice anything about the casing on this?
It's not
camel. It's not Pascal case. It is camel case. You're right, Brian. It is. Yeah, this is convention in the scripting world. Your JavaScript probably didn't start with capital letters, and your TypeScript doesn't either. Interestingly, .NET Core caters for this, where previous implementations of .NET I've seen didn't cater for that out of the box. So even if you've got a capitalized property in C#, yeah, on the way out into the client space, and you can check this out in Swagger, yeah, they all become nice sort of web-friendly conventions which aren't going to mess with other developers when you write your APIs. So that this is really the convention. ASP.NET Core is finally following that convention and automatically converting stuff back and forth between the two.
It also has your data type on the end instead of in front.
Yes, that's yeah, that is correct. You are correct. It does have the data type on the end, and that's just the part of the language design. But it's doing the same sort of thing, you know. I mean, and you'll have to overcome quite a lot of these things as you switch from language to language. Anyway, it happens a lot. But as long as you know, I mean, I always compare it with real life languages. Yeah. There is normally a way to ask for a pair of trousers in another language, you know. So just like that, there's normally a way to concatenate something, and there's normally a way, you know, assign something to a variable, or give something a type. It's only really, it's always there, but the way that things, the way that different things go about it, functional programming is almost completely different to this. But yeah, you can express the same things. So let's go back to the component. So what's going to happen is we've got this thing, results, film results. It starts off with no films in it whatsoever, which is why when it wasn't working properly, that's what you saw, films with nothing on the screen underneath it. That's the default state of it. But because we've promised to implement this ng on it thing, they should be populated straight away. Now, like I say, ng on it is a contractual requirement of the on it thing, of the on it interface. I mean, you don't have to put anything in it, but it needs to be there. Even if it just does, if it's just there and does nothing. And most I think all components actually that you create with Angular CLI will implement this, and they'll give you a blank ng on it. So breaking this down line by line. First thing I'm doing is I'm calling a method on film service called list. Passing in a page number of 1. We'll have a look at it in a minute. Now the subscribe stuff, this is an asynchronous operation, yeah? It happens, do people know the difference between synchronous and asynchronous?
Synchronous is same time, asynchronous is independently.
Yeah, I mean, in programming, a synchronous program will hold up execution as it's doing stuff. Say it's got to get from A to Z, yeah? If K takes a really, really long time, it'll stop doing everything else until it's got through K. It runs through things in order. It's a single process, yeah? JavaScript and TypeScript are the world of the asynchronous. You don't quite know when you're going to get stuff back. So this thing, subscribe, basically says, look, I'm interested in the results of this. When they come back, I want to do something with them, okay? So, but it doesn't hold up execution whilst it's waiting for them. So this is saying, I know I don't have the results straight away. Oh, I don't have the typing skills this morning either. But when I get the results, when those results come back, I want to do something with them. And specifically, I want to put the results I've got back from this method into our local collection of results. So, yep, results are here. Store them locally. Right, so that's basically the entire component broken down piece by piece. This is important, the subscribe thing here. We've got to make sure that whatever we get back is visible to our component. That's why we're assigning it locally, because once it is visible, we can expose those results in the markup. Now, like, don't worry about typing this all in. I'm not going to keep it on this screen so that you can type comments, okay? But I want to show you what's going on there. So up here, we've got a header called films. We all understand that. That's fine. Next, we've got a special Angular statement. This is ngIf. Will only show the element and any containing elements if the thing being referenced is, I'm going to use a real sort of client word, a JavaScripty word, truthy. Truthy. That people use that term simply because in JavaScript there's loads of things that can be true, yeah, and there's loads of things that can be false. If you try and evaluate a 0 as a Boolean, yeah, it's false. Yeah. If you try and evaluate null as a Boolean, it's false. Anything with a value, if you try and evaluate a list of things which is empty, it's false. That's what I mean by truthy, and that's why it's a bit confusing. A positive number, no matter what it is, would always evaluate as true. A completed string would always evaluate as true in this when you're doing this sort of thing. And a populated list would always sort of evaluate as true. So what I'm saying here, if results items is true, and in that context, if results items has got things in it, then I want to show the stuff inside of it. So truthy. And I'll just put some. Again, I'm going to put all of this stuff up there, so you won't have to worry too much. So truthy equals a populate list, non-zero number, populate string, and it's good to know that, because sometimes you'll only want to show something if that something exists. There's a great example on our film detail page. Yeah, every film that we've got has got a language. Yeah, only some of them have got an original language. Yeah, and I don't want to show the little box out for original language if there's nothing to display, right? So I can actually say if original language, use an ngIf there, and if it isn't there, then we don't show it. So this will only get shown if we've got stuff in there. The next bit's another popular Angular thing. It's an ng4, and that's just like a for loop with an Angular. So iterate. At this point, we know that we've got items because we wouldn't be displaying it anyway. We want to iterate over them one by one.
So is it safe to say that ngIf is like an if statement and ng4 is like a for loop?
Yep, it is. But they're specifically about they're display constructs. You wouldn't do massive logic here. It's just for turning things. Sorry, I should be repeating the question. Sasha wants to know whether this was ngIf was your equivalent of an if statement, and ng4 was your equivalent of a for loop. And yeah, they are, but they're really simple. You wouldn't do complex logic with them. It's just a case of turn this thing on or turn this thing off, depending on the state of the thing that you're looking at. Yeah. Okay, so here we're actually inside each loop. We're looping through because of the ng4, right? We've still got access to result.items, but now we've also got access to something called film. And we don't have, we couldn't access something called film up this area. I mean, it just doesn't exist yet. It only exists within the context of this loop. So this represents a single film in our collection of results. And at that point you can start using Angular, angled syntax to start bringing these things out. and that's pretty much that's pretty much what we do. The rest of it is just, you know, little different markups, but there's nothing else going on here. But just for you know, just for clarity, I'm going to put in a couple of markers down at the bottom. So the NG4 loop ends here. And the NG if statement ends here. Right, anyone got any questions about this?
Yeah, for your collection, do you need items to scroll through that? Because in the hero example, they didn't have anything attached to it.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what the NG if's doing. If you don't have any items, you just won't show it at all, you know? Okay. So are you not getting items through at the moment?
No, I'm getting through it. I was asking when they did this in heroes.
Yeah.
For example, they didn't have, they just had led film with results and had nothing else on the agenda.
Yeah.
So you put items, I was wondering, what does that do?
So
because they had like heroes.
Yes, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's great. I've just been asked why I'm going for results.items, yeah? Wherein in the last project, correctly pointed out, we just went for heroes equals heroes. That's a choice that I made, yeah? I wanted to have an object where not only did I have a page full of items, but I'd also know the total items that are in there. So I decided to go with this film results class. I'll show you again, which had that in there as well. Okay. That will help us with paging later on, you know. So because obviously we don't want to, if we've got thousands of records, we don't want to have to load them all up at once to know how many are there at once. But that's a great question. Right.
So I have a question as well, Paul.
Okay. Scott.
Where does film's component come into the primary website?
That is a great question. So,
is this its own thing?
Right, there's Scott's asked the question, where do film's components come into the primary website? Well, there's two places. I mean, first of all, we've got to let the site know that film's component is a thing and a thing that we want to use. Yeah, that is mostly handled for us. If you do ng generate component and then component name, it'll automatically wire that up for you. Yeah, but then there's we also need to tell the application when to show the film component. Yeah, and that is in this file here called app routing module. Yeah, see this here? It says when someone asks for the path films, yeah, give them the films component. Yeah, when someone asks for an individual film with an ID there, give them the film detail component. So you have like Angular CLI, which is the command line tool that we've been using to add all of our new stuff, will generate most of that plumbing for you. But for stuff like routing, yeah, you'll need to say when that component gets displayed. The other way, if you want to sort of just hard code something, Scott, is you can just use the selector that's defined here. Yeah. Remember this? We can create an HTML tag called @films. Yeah, just has to be empty. But Angular will know, because you've told it that it needs to look for something called @films. It'll say, "Oh, someone's asked for @films there. I need to get the @films component and put it where that stuff is." Yeah, it's like a little placeholder thing. So yeah, great questions, really cool. Anyone else before we move on and just have a little look at other stuff?
Click on the last thing you said for the routing ng component.
Yep.
That you would the command and then the component name. I just missed that middle part.
The routing stuff's fully covered in the Tour of Heroes thing, yeah. So you'll be able to get, you'll be able to get stuff from there. But you know, there's no routing by default in Angular. You have to define that yourself, and that's because I think from a design perspective, people didn't want to hem folk in, you know, and say, right, okay, you have to do this one way, and there's no other way, etc., etc. You might not need a routing application. Someone might decide to write a huge monolithic component which is really badly designed and it has everything in one place. Like routing is just another example of an Angular module, and if you look at this is a self-contained bit of code which is going to do a certain job, and that's what Node modules contains. Just tons of different little modules that can be used in isolation or in combination with other things to build a bigger app than you would have been able to make on your own steam, you know. But we've actually created our own module here because we're unlikely to be able to download a set of routing things that precisely match the site that we're trying to develop. Yeah, so some of these things you'll always have to do yourself, but the main work is actually in this thing called router module, and that is part of Angular. We're just defining our own routes, and we've created an application routing module, which is just about the routing stuff for our application. Okay, but we're leaning heavily on these things up here that we're borrowing from Angular router. Right, do you think now's a good time for a break and then we can start?
Yeah, I think do a break and then come back.
And then do an exercise, yeah?
Another week, hopefully everyone's on the same page. Come back, it's like, this is what we spent 2 hours doing this morning.
Yep.
And this is how you do it again for your own project.
What is it?
Yeah, okay, well...
Is it something moving?
5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10:30. Yeah, that works. Right, so we're breaking for 10 minutes, if that's okay, Richmond. We've got one little thing to look at here, but we'll be able to start moving on and doing our own stuff soon.
Let Richmond know what time we're coming back.
We're coming back at 10:30. We'll probably be starting a little later because I'm afraid to say we're not all prompt and punctual all of the time. Yeah. We have stragglers. Oh dear, wrong one.